Hey everyone, welcome back to Trending Left. This is episode 4. We do not have a guest this week, but we do have a lot of news stories that we want to cover for you guys and kind of give you guys our takes on. So first things first, everyone knows about the NFL protests that have been happening recently. People on the liberal side of the argument wanting to stand in solidarity with those that are kneeling, for racial justice in America, and those on the conservative side of the argument that are burning NFL apparel and vowing to disavow from the NFL. What are your guys' thoughts on
the
this?
NFL is really sad that they're burning the products they already paid for. So the NFL is very, 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 very sad about that. Look, in general, this has always been a problem with athletes and people that are not politicians. People on the conservative side of the spectrum are just, they beg them to not be political, to not have any activist viewpoints, and it's ridiculous because we literally have a celebrity president. President that won because he's a celebrity, and no one told him to stop wading into politics because he ran for president and won. So this idea that football players and sports athletes cannot have political opinions is frankly ridiculous.
The hilarious thing to me is they're basically doing the NFL equivalent of burning the flag. And so, hey, if they want to exercise their constitutional right to burn something, then, hey, by all means, they have that right.
I find it really hypocritical that conservatives always are pushing this agenda that liberals are standing against free speech.
Yes.
When we're seeing the exact same thing here, freedom of expression is the way that you have former CIA officials and other people painting this, which I think is pretty apt. It's so sad to see that conservatives are making this equivalency between protesting the flag and protesting racial injustice. You have people who are coming, on MSNBC and other news mainstream media outlets right now saying I was an Iraqi war veteran or I was an Afghanistani war veteran and I wasn't fighting for the flag. The flag wasn't why I enlisted and signed up to serve my country. I wanted to serve my country because I believe in what it stands for and I believe in, sometimes the missions that we serve overseas. But I think if you interviewed all the veterans from the past 20 years, you would probably see that the majority of them would be in support of standing up for basic civil liberties for all people. And I think it's ridiculous to think that people protesting their government or protesting injustice in their country is being unpatriotic.
Yep.
It's
and
ridiculous.
that's kind of...
it's the opposite of what this country stands for.
Exactly, yeah. And in my opinion, this kind of boils down to an issue of patriotism versus nationalism. Patriotism, you do things like this when your country's doing something wrong, and in this case, when you have the police being discriminatory against people of color, that's when you gotta stand up and do protests like this. That's a patriotic thing to do. A nationalist thing to do would be to say, hey, I always love my country even if it's being racist. And that's what you find a lot of these Trump supporters who don't have any respect for what Colin Kaepernick and everyone else is doing kind of are right now. Yeah.
And this did not start with him. This has been going on in the Olympics, and other football players have been doing this for quite a while before Colin Kaepernick. I made a post on Facebook the other day saying it's ridiculous that people think that this is going to start and end with Colin Kaepernick, as if just getting him kicked out of the NFL or not drafted is going to put an end to all of this. It's ridiculous because it's about standing up for an ongoing injustice and inequality that's happening right now, and it's just ridiculous to think that the left is just making a martyr of Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah, and historically, this goes back to the civil rights movement when their leaders would literally take a knee. This is a storied tradition, and it's really something that is not unprecedented whatsoever.
I suppose we ought to talk a little bit about what Trump actually said regarding these things. I know he went on some tweet storm, ranting and railing against the NFL players and among other athletes that were just saying
he said to get that SOB off the field.
Yeah, he said that in a rally, and it's honestly, conservatives love to claim that there's an attack on free speech on college campuses or other venues, but the real attacks on free speech are coming from conservatives protesting this kind of thing. And this is a good segue into our next topic, Andrew.
Yeah. So on Tuesday, Attorney General Jeff Sessions was speaking at Georgetown Law School, and he was talking a lot about how what Marco was just saying, the freedom of thought and speech on American campuses are under attack. That's a quote, direct quote. Obviously, we're all university students. We're all involved in partisan and nonpartisan political orgs on campus. We frequently, debate ideas, discuss ideas with people who don't agree with us. Obviously, that's a big part of what this podcast is about too.
Yes.
What are your guys' views about campus climate on UT, discussion?
it kind of goes into, so there's a recent study that shows that a majority of conservatives are actually not in favor of college anymore. They actually think it's detrimental. They think it ruins your intellect, your morals, etc. And that's a really frightening trend for such a, huge part of our country to be taking.
Yeah, and also, free speech. When conservatives say free speech, they don't really mean free speech. They just mean freedom to say these racist, awful things, to have, like, Ann Coulter and everyone else just spew a ton of nonsense on college campuses. That's not free speech. That's dangerous.
Yeah, I've said I've said this before to y'all, but every time like something like this comes out, like Jeff Sessions says something like this, or like some neo-Nazi is protested off a college campus for good reason. Like there were always these comments on Facebook or on YouTube or whatever you want, like and don't read Facebook comments, but
Don't.
but there are always like these conservative hacks saying things like, colleges have become this, like they become daycares for these students where like they're not challenged or anything. And I honestly think that people that say that have never been to college. And I know that's like, you can call me a liberal elite for saying that, but having spent over a year at this campus, on such a large and diverse campus, yes, it's a liberal campus in a liberal city, but I've had my ideas challenged so frequently, and it's made me a better person. It's made me think harder about like the viewpoints that I hold. I mean, even on this podcast, my views are challenged constantly. Okay,
Yeah.
And but like,
Even I probably give you a harder time than any conservative does.
yeah, but see, like that's it, right? Like
Yeah.
people, like you can have disagreements with people like of your own ideology, and then you still encounter people of other ideologies that have disagreements with you, like with your professors, with other students, with like other leaders, and like this idea that like we're not being challenged and it's just some liberal love fest is honestly just so insulting to the fact that like university students have built a climate of like open discussion and freedom of discussion about all sorts of things, but when we say that we're not going to tolerate racism and misogyny and like Nazism, then conservatives get all up in arms about that.
Exactly. Tolerating intolerance is not tolerance. Plain and simple.
And honestly, like I took a political economy class last semester. I mean, so this is like talking about trade and talking about our relationships with foreign countries as far as like investments go and stuff like that. Like it's very much tied into Trump's rhetoric of like America first, like we're gonna start a trade war with China and it's gonna be great, that type of thing. I mean, but like that professor, you could tell that they were a liberal through what they would tell me outside of class, but I mean in class they were still being impartial and saying like this is the conservative argument, this is the liberal argument. It is possible that like one of these may be better in certain situations or the other one may be better. Like I think everyone was just pretty exposed to both sides of the argument. Like, I disagree fundamentally that there is not objectively good policy. I think that both parties need to come to an understanding that more government is better economically. Maybe socially you can disagree on that. But, like, I feel like myself, like you were saying, I've been challenged adequately while I've been here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let's be fair. As far as they may have claimed that for a while, but they're going for plenty of big government right now. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's big government when they want it, small
Yep.
government when we don't.
Exactly.
All right, so next story, Roy Moore. Not
boy.
Roger Moore, like Sam. That's James Bond.
Yeah.
Roy Moore defeated Trump's candidate Luther Strange, who he backed in the Alabama Special Senate election that recently happened. This was obviously a pretty big thing because Roy Moore was also on the short list for Trump's Supreme Court nominees.
Oh,
so it's
God.
entirely possible that he could have been a future nominee if anything had happened.
I think I'd rather have him in the Senate, honestly.
Look, honestly, our guest from episode 3, Zachary Price, like he grew up and like he lived some of his life in Alabama, so he was represented by Roy Moore on several like instances, and you could just hear the sadness and you could see the sadness in his face when Roy Moore won that primary. This
is a guy who pulled a handgun out at his rally saying he was in favor of the Second Amendment, who has also said that Sandy Hook was like because we weren't following like God's plan.
Yeah,
like,
Sandy
my
Hook
God,
and
wow.
like some of the hurricanes, I think,
Someone's
or
been
like
listening
a
to
it's
tsunami.
just
like
like
Alex Jones.
Basically.
Or Alex Jones has been listening to him. Like
This
you
is-
don't know.
Yeah,
He
like
was booted off the Alabama Supreme Court twice too.
Dang.
Like,
I know,
Yeah.
like like you've been deemed
when you're too conservative
for the
Alabama.
for the Alabama Supreme Court. It's honestly, I don't. This is one of those things where you don't understand. Like, I'm having deja vu because like I felt this way about Trump. This is one of those things where you don't understand how people can like see past a lot of these really fundamental flaws with this person. Like Andrew said, like he's repeatedly mentioned like certain tragedies that this nation has had to face were punishments from God because of like gay people or because of our sins and whatnot. And he's also said other things about minorities, calling them, like, using racial slurs to refer to Asian people and people of Native American descent. It's honestly, this is, you know, not to say this word, well, I say it very often, but I'll just say it, like, this is a very deplorable kind of person. And the fact that you cannot count on Alabamans to vote against this person because he's fundamentally wrong and just way too conservative to be elected, it's like that doesn't even matter anymore. You can't count on that because we become so partisan, we become so polarized, and the fact that we probably can't count on the DNC to push this guy Doug Jones to help, you know, create a more competent challenge against Roy Moore. So we're gonna have to deal with the reality that this guy is probably gonna be in the Senate. Mitch McConnell, you know, for all of his faults, is probably gonna have to wrangle this guy, and you know, it's gonna make Mitch McConnell look like Bernie Sanders by comparison.
All right, so next story. We recently found out that at least 6 White House advisors, I mean, these were top advisors or are still top advisors to Trump, have been using private emails.
But her emails!
Lock them up!
To conduct state business. And this is including Steve Bannon, Reince Priebus, Ivanka,
Wow.
Jared. So, I mean, obviously there's a huge Hippocratic, you know, take on this.
Hypocritical
Take, yeah.
I mean, this isn't a medical thing.
Hippocratic oath. No, but I mean, a huge hypocritical, you know, view on this, because Hillary's, I know she's been coming out recently on this stump, kind of saying like, you know, what the heck?
What happened?
The amount. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's ironic.
The amount of criticism that she got for that, and now this, they're kind of shooing it under the rug, saying like it's no big deal.
Exactly. It's ironic because people on the right, they were giving Hillary Clinton so much, you know, so much. Yeah.
I'm bleeping that.
for her for the email server, but then you find 6 people on Trump's, you know, cabinet and top advisors do the same thing, and the Republicans are silent. I haven't heard anything from anyone on the right saying, "Hey, this is really messed up."
It's because it's not something they ever cared about in the first place.
Exactly.
It was just something they were using as a blatant political ploy to get more votes.
Yeah, it's just so irritating.
Maybe you have the odd Republican senator saying, "Oh, I'm gravely disappointed that these advisors are using private email service." When this point last year, they were, you know, honestly in hysterics over Hillary Clinton's email server, which of course was not like a good thing. When that's not what we're saying, but we're saying that like
So blown out of
the
proportion.
hypocrisy from the right. I mean, we don't even have to explain it. It's just unfathomable sometimes.
And then I think you can argue that this is kind of a misogynistic thing too, right? Because when Hillary Clinton makes one mistake, you know, everyone on the right blows up. But when Trump,
including some on the left,
that's true. Mm-hmm. But when Trump makes all these mistakes, you know, sexual assault allegations, you know, grab her by the and all that stuff, you know, and he just and no one says anything, and I think it boils down to misogyny. A well-qualified woman can, in a lot of cases, can't get as far as a man who has no experience because of misogyny in our society, and that's really, really unfortunate.
Yeah, and the fact that the public outrage over this has either been just very low or not very like simmery, that's just all the proof of that our media doesn't want to pay as much attention to this, that the right doesn't want to pay as much attention to this, that, you know, people just aren't as outraged by this anymore as they were when these revelations came out about Hillary Clinton.
I actually think the media is paying a lot of attention to it, along with all of the Trump-Russia stuff, the Mueller stuff. It's just part of the genuine like media spin cycle that's coming out every day. And I think because people have become so desensitized to just like the constant ethics violations, which we'll talk a little bit more about that later with Tom Price, but just like the constant, you know, drain the swamp that is not happening.
Yeah.
I think it just gets lost with everyday people. Like, they're not concerned about it as much as they are like, oh, look, Trump's off at, you know, a golf course again while Puerto Rico's flooding, you know.
They're dumping sewage water in the swamp.
Yeah,
A lot of sewage water.
That's exactly what's going on here. You get what you vote for, people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, so next up, Republican leaders in Congress, as well as Trump, both held press conferences unveiling their new tax reform proposal, which is basically shutting it down to where there are only 3 tax brackets now, raising taxes on the middle class and lower income Americans, and granting massive tax breaks to the wealthy through like repeals of the estate tax and the budgetary stuff they're doing. I was talking to Sam about this earlier. It's a $700 billion budget that they're passing, with a lot of earmark spending for, obviously important entitlement stuff. But there's a lot of small tax cuts that are happening as part of it that are actually sort of repealing Obamacare light type regulations on businesses and stuff like that. But it's also saving the wealthy a lot of money and cutting a lot of needed benefits for everyday Americans. So, I mean, it's also been said that Trump is going to get a $1 billion return probably from this tax plan, considering how wealthy he is, as well as, the members of his cabinet receiving probably not nearly that high, but also
a lot, because this is the wealthiest cabinet in history.
Yeah,
and the Trump administration, the Republican Congress, their goal is to save that cabinet and their wealthy donors as much money as possible. There was a study that came out that showed that over 80% of the tax cuts will go to benefit the top 1%.
Wow.
And that's just ridiculous. At least with like the Bush tax cuts, they had a little bit more to go on. This kind of tax reform. This tax reform being like parroted out by the Republican Party, like it's inexcusable, and like it doesn't even go with what like the quote unquote Trump base wants, right? Like they want higher taxes for the wealthy, just like we do.
Yeah.
And like this is not delivering.
I was actually going to mention this. It's really interesting how we haven't seen nearly as much public tension yet between McConnell, Ryan, and Trump on those different messages, because Trump ran on the idea of like, we're sticking it to the elites. I'm like you. I'm an everyday guy who made it big.
I only got $100 million.
$1 million.
I can help you make it big too, which is the whole idea of the Trump brand, right?
Right.
You can be whoever you want to be.
Anyone can cook.
But anyone can cook. But you also have people like Steve Mnuchin coming out and saying like, we can't guarantee that taxes won't be raised on the middle class.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Like, that's completely against what your boss is telling you to speak about.
If you're literally coming out and saying that is just as blatant of an admission as you can get in politics.
He's gaffed like that in front of Elizabeth Warren and other people on the budget committee, the finance committee, banking committee. It's just, they don't even have a sound message on it yet. Whereas, Ryan and McConnell have had, years now to talk about just like, we're going to save the American middle class tons of money, trickle down economics. But Trump has never talked about his trumped up trickle down economics. It's never been a part of his message, And I feel like that's going to be something key going forward as far as like, is Trump going to support this tax plan? Is he going to?
Of course he's going to support it.
But I mean, is he going to support Congress in it and say like, I did this versus like, look what Congress did?
Look, for all of the faults of our polarized society, at the very least, an ideological person, like they know what they want and they know what to refuse. Since Trump isn't quite like that, he doesn't know what he wants, he doesn't know what to refuse, which is why it's so easy for Democrats to work with him and to kind of like sneak in bills under him. And it's so easy for Republicans to just kind of like sweep the rug out from like what his populist base wants and pass these things that would frankly just hurt all, everyday Americans. He has no idea what's in this tax reform bill. He has no idea what kind of impact it will have for his voters and but all he cares about is what's his bottom line going to look like, and what is the bottom line of his wealthy friends going to look like.
Absolutely,
So
he had no
he's
idea.
going to profit from this a lot, and that's certainly a theme with everyone in the White House. They're trying to profit from this presidency. You see Steve Mnuchin taking the flight to see the eclipse, which cost millions of dollars, and you also see Tom Price personally profiting from
And bye Tom Price.
Yeah, so Tom Price just resigned, and I want to point out the messages that were coming out from Tom Price in the White House. We have Wednesday at 10 p.m. This was posted on MSNBC's feed on Facebook. Mm-hmm. It talks about, Scott Pruitt obviously spending money for luxury air travel. But it also has this picture. You guys can't see it, obviously, since this is a podcast. But it's a lovely little gaffed photo of Tom Price talking about, oh, yeah, sure, I'm doing this, but it's necessary for my job. Then you have the next day, Thursday at 5 p.m., and he is quoted saying, I will take no more private charter flights as Secretary of HHS, no exceptions, and also says that he will pay taxpayers back due to the controversy. Mm-hmm. Then Friday at 3:54, he's fired.
I'm waiting for my check, Tom.
Yeah.
We're all waiting for our checks.
Yeah, hurry up.
For real though, I think this was part of a longer scheme than just the, 400,000.
Yeah, I definitely think it was part of the healthcare debacle.
Yeah, he said from the beginning, Trump said from the beginning, if Price didn't get, Obamacare repeal passed, he's out. And so I think this just provided a convenient excuse.
And like Tom Price has been profiting off healthcare like since he's been in the Congress. Like he's been on the
he bought insurance stocks right before he supported a bill through a committee.
Didn't he get insider trading charges for that, or
there was a scandal, but there was no formal charges.
Because nothing matters anymore. Nothing matters anymore. You know, the people that should be behind bars aren't behind bars.
I mean, because in that case, like there's an episode of The West Wing where it talks a little bit about like where Toby buys. If you guys have seen that, know who that character is. He buys some stock in technology, but like it's very hard to determine like motive in that sort of thing. Yeah. But it's so obvious the optics of it. But obviously innocent until proven guilty. You need probable cause.
Right. But this is but Tom Price, like, this is a guy that's been profiting off the American people and profiting off his cabinet position, and like now he's out for it. You know, whether
if only that were the precedent, you could do that for everyone.
Yeah, right? No, like Steve Mnuchin deserves to be out, Betsy DeVos deserves to be out.
Absolutely.
But you know, we take what you can get, and let's
Gary
see.
Cohn, Scott Pruitt.
Steve Bannon. Let's see.
He's out.
Let's see what Swamp Monster is dragged through the Senate confirmation process.
I don't know if we actually have this on the agenda, but did you all see the news article about Scott Pruitt trying to do a 25,000 soundproof room?
Oh yeah, I saw that.
I know that.
And the company that builds it was like, this is such a strange request. We have no idea why he's buying this room. Like it's a bunch of just personal expenditures and just luxurious costs they think they can put on taxpayers just for the purpose of just like, well,
in this case, I'm not so worried about the money. I'm worried about the soundproof room, particularly for the reason it's going to be used for, you know,
murdering staffers.
Possibly,
Wait,
actually.
Wait, that's not funny.
Yeah, but like, you know, he's going to be using that to bring in industry people and to make all these side deals with them. That's clearly what it's for. There is no other possible reason for it.
Maybe just like to lay down some sweet tracks in his spare time. I don't know.
Yeah, Scott Pruitt and Blue Maze collaboration.
For those of you that don't know, Nick moonlights as Blue Maze, a house music artist.
Next mixtape dropping 11/1.
Oh my God, we got off the deep end.
1-1-1.
All right, we've got one more story for you guys. So recently, obviously, Puerto Rico has been badly hit by hurricanes and flooding, much like the rest of the Caribbean, much like Mexico, much like southern United States. It's particularly bad in Puerto Rico, though. The electric grid is decimated. You have people dead, people missing. Critical infrastructure that was already, frankly, crumbling and in disarray has been made worse. And especially in San Juan, we're seeing a lot. The mayor there, Carmen Yulín Cruz, is talking a lot about how, you know, Trump and his administration and just the United States in general have failed to stand up for Puerto Rico time and time again, and they're continuing the trend. What are your takes on this?
Well, I mean, that's certainly true. Did y'all see the tweet he did the other day when he was saying, "Oh, Puerto Rico always asks for too much. They want too much. Are you kidding me, Donald Trump? They literally just had a hurricane that devastated their power structure, flooded."
He said it needs to be a community effort. Like, they need to pull themselves up, which is like,
oh God,
which is it's awful because it's the same Republican
orthodoxy.
I'm not going to say
Houston, you need to pull yourselves up. Like,
exactly.
I'm not going to say necessarily conservative argument, because I think that there are certain groups of libertarians out there who believe very much in like people coming together, like sharing resources to help people. I will say though, it tends to be the Republican argument that people need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and just help themselves. But a lot of the people that we see who are making these arguments, like Donald Trump, had massive amounts of money or resources thrown at them in order to make them successful. They did not get there just on their own hard work and merit.
Yeah, and
Jared Kushner only got into Harvard because his parents were like very much, say in favor of the administration board there. Like, there have been news stories that have come out about that. Like, he had very bad grades, well below test scores, things like that. It's a bunch of privileged people sitting on this ivory tower thinking that, this is just a territory, it doesn't matter. Like, these people are United States citizens.
Puerto Rico is, like, implicitly and explicitly hurt by the fact that very few people know that they're U.S. citizens. They're just
50% of Americans.
And they're just
really
crazy.
That's insane.
And the Congress thinks of them as just 3 million brown people in the middle of the ocean, very big ocean.
Spanish speakers, nonetheless.
And we talked about the political motivations too. They don't want to grant them statehood because it would give Democratic senators,
and Democratic congressmen, exactly. And look, they are hurt by the fact that people don't know about their status and that people don't make enough clamor about them. And Trump, they've been put in that mess where they have to ask for a lot of money because Congress has, time and time again put them by the wayside when Puerto Rico desperately needs debt relief. They need infrastructure help. And now that they've been devastated by, hurricane upon hurricane, they really need a lot of help to help rebuild the little infrastructure that they already have. It's great that we're helping out Houston and Florida, but we also have to remember that there are 3 million American citizens still out there in the middle of the ocean that desperately need our help and that desperately need attention that the other 50 states get.
It has to
Big
be
water, man.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of water. No, it's a lot of
big ocean, lots of ocean.
Yeah.
It has to be an immediate focus on getting the help that is needed down there. Obviously, there's a lot of restrictions with the Merchant Marine Act, which prevents foreign ships from coming in and helping. It has to be American ships run, owned by American merchants and manned by American crews, which obviously makes it a little bit logistically difficult.
Right.
I mean, we've got such a massive economy. Like, it really shouldn't be that difficult.
Yeah, but Trump is not mobilizing people, which is why you're seeing New York City is mobilizing people themselves because the national administration is failing.
Yeah, and you also have all living former presidents coming together and creating their infrastructure to help repair and help out in Puerto Rico. The other day at 7-Eleven of all places, I heard a radio ad with all former living presidents where they all lended their voices to create this radio ad to help out and to help encourage people to donate to their cause and help out Puerto Rico. And when the former presidents, Republicans and Democrats have to come together to do this instead of the current administration, it's sad, and it's not going to get. It also takes putting pressure on our representatives to push through relief bills through Congress and also pressuring the administration, and it's not going to happen unless we reach out and do something and show to people that there's an appetite in the U.S. to help out Puerto Rico.
And like I was saying earlier, and I got kind of sidetracked. The immediate thing is to get help to those people, obviously, to remove unnecessary restrictions for a temporary time or even permanently, and just get the help there that is needed. Pass a spending bill that increases infrastructure spending, increases, the truly full faith and credit of the United States to its citizens there. And then eventually, I don't know where you guys stand on this policy, but granting Puerto Rico statehood.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it was 76% of the populace in the last referendum voted. And so I think it's just, if that's what they want, is self-determination wise, then we should grant them that.
So I'm kind of on my conspiracy soapbox, and
okay,
I think
let's hear it.
I think that Trump is literally doing the whole non-reaction, not sending any real help intentionally to drive them away from wanting it. Because if they are like, wow, they really screwed us over last time, then why would they want to join our country as a state?
And all that does is fuel, it fuels the Puerto Rico independence movement, which is, it's fine. I may even agree that maybe Puerto Rico should be its own country, as opposed to just being a state or U.S. territory. And if that's what Trump wants to do, then that's a pretty, it's a pretty malicious and cynical way of doing it by allowing these millions of people to suffer without power. The whole, 70% or the entire island is currently without power.
Yeah.
And it's not going to get any better, and they may be without power for months and months to come. That would be totally unjustifiable in Houston or Florida.
Yep,
People wouldn't stand for it, and Puerto Ricans are trying to not stand for it, but they're not getting the help that they need.
Absolutely.
There's a real disparity in how we responded to Houston, and how, even in terms of media coverage.
I've heard people recently, journalists, say that this is Trump's Katrina.
Yeah.
As far as the response, and I think that is a pretty apt summary between Harvey, Irma. Were the other ones Katia, Jose, Lee,
Maria.
So many.
Yeah, the whole sling of storms and unfortunate natural disasters that this area is being, faced with. I think that's a very apt way to describe it. This has been a failure by the Trump administration. It's no surprise that it is a failure, considering the lack of resources, logistics, just general planning. They can't even write memos correctly. They have typos all the time. It's just carelessness or neglect, and either way, it should not be tolerated.
Incompetence.
Yeah. Donald Trump doesn't care about brown people.
All right, guys. So those are all the news stories we have for you today. We hope you guys enjoyed our takes on a lot of this. Obviously, it's a lot of stuff that we've been kind of bashing Republicans on this week. But if Congress deserves it, Trump deserves it.
Their feet to the
we'll
fire.
be more than happy to do that. We'll be coming back to you next week with another guest. Obviously, we're hoping to. No, we will. Don't worry.
Okay.
So be looking on our Facebook page for promotion about who that is, and we will see you guys next week.
Thanks for listening.